It's getting late, almost 3 a.m. What a surprise that I'm drunk again. Just saw a picture, you and him, and now I'm losing myself. What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you've told me. Give me a little time. I'm numb and left with no feeling.
What's up, Make Pop Music? It's Austin here from Make Pop Music and Austin Holt Audio and Visual, and we are back this week with another tutorial. And for this week, we want to do another song walkthrough where we kind of break down a genre. And that genre today is going to be straight up pop in the style of Lauv, LANY, and Conan Gray. So we're going to be breaking down some more of the minimal kind of somber pop and talking about how to incorporate retro elements with modern elements, how to really focus on melody, and then how to keep a simple production but have some ear candy so you're always keeping your listeners interested and you're kind of keeping the song progressing. So those will be the main things we focus on in this video. Let us know what you think, like, comment, and subscribe. If you have any questions, let us know in the comments below, and if there are any artists or styles that you want to see a breakdown like this of, just let us know in the comments below and we can try to make that happen. This is the last weekend of our sale at makepopmusic.com, so head over to our website, shop everything, save 25% off of the entire store, save 50% off the Ultimate Bundle, and get the free Disco Pop Pack when you spend $45 or more. Super sick sale. It'll end March 29th, and this will be the last sale that we run until Black Friday, so definitely make sure you go cop some things if you were already on the fence. But without further ado, let's actually hop into this DAW and start constructing this project. All right, now we're in the session. Let's go ahead and look at the things that I think are most essential in the order that I feel like they're most essential for this style. So you've got the kick and snare, and it is really important to have a solid, like really tight kick and snare where you're getting a lot of kind of room sound that's gated out, but it still feels very punchy and dry. So right now we're working with a kick and the snare each from our Pop Star pack, and just together we kind of came up with a quick little pattern. So we got a nice little boom, ba for the verse, really doing nothing crazy. What I did was I actually duplicated the snare and then I added a little micro shift on top of that. So this snare is actually getting paralleled with its own kind of wide layer. Just to give it a little spread and width. The next thing that we do, there's really only one thing happening in this entire verse, and that's just a little gallopy bass. And I'll kind of show you, there are a couple ways that you can do this. You can either make a bass like this where you kind of have an LFO or an oscillator kind of driving it with a sync, or what I did is I just actually picked a nice little plucky bass, and then you can see right here as I open this up, I actually played it to get some variation. So we've got, and then what I did is I just added kickstart over top of it. So now we're gonna get that little swell. And really, that's pretty much all that's happening in the verse. Then we can just go to a little thing that we layered right here. We've got this little electro snare. So we've got that, we've got the synth. I've got a little kind of vocal hit that I put right here that's just got a bunch of reverb and delay. And it just kind of acts as a little tonal element to kind of set the tone. The next thing I did was I didn't want a synth over this whole thing, but I did want at least some kind of synth element happening every now and then. So what I did is I added this cool little synth, and let me take everything kind of off of it as it is. And it was just this little synth and omnisphere, and I kind of played it as a little swell. So you'll kind of hear as it goes. Give me 1 second. So we've got this on the little backbeat. And then what I did is I threw on micro shift to spread that out. And then I threw on Camel Crusher to like really crush it, give us some saturation and some compression. And then I threw on a pretty big reverb and a pretty big delay, and just EQ'd out some of those muddy lows and boosted a little bit of the high. So now we've got something like this. And stuff like that is really what makes this genre special. You need to be able to kind of put in those little peppery, you know, ear candy elements that are not going to happen a ton, but when they happen, it kind of helps the melody and the chord progression kind of sink in a little bit better. So we've got that happening in the verse pretty much with nothing else. Then we've just got a vocal on top. And this vocal is processed pretty normally all the way up until right here, where we throw on a slap delay with H delay, and then we also throw on some saturation with decapitator. So here it is with just one lead vocal.
I just saw you your sweater in the corner of my closet. I remember when you bought it last July.
So we've also got a delay throw down here that we had muted. This is just a very, very simple 1/4 delay throw, not really doing anything crazy. Now we're gonna pull in one more percussive element. This is where we pull in a loop. So we've got loop 19 from our Sounds of Life pack. This is just gunshots banging. Sounds like this. I like using weird little percussive loops like this that have their own little backbeat, especially with something that is so consistent like this kick and snare pattern. And that just adds a nice little bit of like actual groove to it. And that is the entire verse. We've literally just got the kick, the snare, the little accent snare, a bass, and then these two little synth things that happen every now and then with a vocal.
I just saw your sweater in the corner of my closet. I remember when you bought it last July.
So that's the whole verse. Let's actually work backwards and let's go to the intro because we're gonna need this part right here. This is actually the first thing that I came up with when I came up for the whole song, and this is kind of the basis of the entire chord progression. It's this nice little bubbly synth right here that I've actually used Omnisphere for, and I've got it kind of alternating left and right. So what I did was, since it is a sine wave and it didn't have much top end whatsoever, I'll kind of show you what it sounded like straight out. Here it is. But what I decided to do was I needed to throw on a little bit of spice. So I actually added a bit crusher and then just EQ'd it a little bit. And that's gonna give us that nice little. And that really, really helps it sit out in the mix, opposed to just kind of falling to the wayside and just ending up being some kind of like, you know, nice little pluck that's gonna come back in the chorus but will not ultimately be heard. Adding that little bit crusher on it helps us hear that a little bit more. Since that is panning back and forth side to side, I didn't want it to get disorienting, so I did a very, very similar patch in Omnisphere. This one's actually made out of a square, and since it was a square, which typically has more high end, I filtered out the high end with a low pass filter, and then bit crushed this as well. And this is just straight up the middle. And that's just gonna give that little bouncy synth some actual body in the middle. That way it's not kind of like throwing listeners off if they're listening to a really, you know, aggressive pair of stereo speakers. So we've got that for the intro, and then we've just got a nice little, like, I kind of chopped up that gunshot loop that we have a little later, and then added just a little reverse from Sounds of Life.
I just saw your sweater in the corner.
And then it just goes through that verse that we just talked about first. Then I've just got a nice little, it's the same transitional sound, that little bracelet effect. And then I've got a couple different hits. Bracelet Slam is from Sounds of Life. Impact is from Dark Pop. Awe Down Hit is from Sounds of Life. And Skid Row is from Dark Pop as well. And then we've still got that little O hit gonna happen right here. But this is where we tie in some new synths. So we've got these 3 synths that are gonna happen. It's 2 analog brass synths and one that's just kind of like arpeggiated staccato synth. And I have that kind of driving a cutoff filter because I really wanted a kind of minimal pre-chorus. So you'll see as it builds up and then tears back down.
It's getting late, almost 3 a.m. What a surprise that I'm drunk again. Just saw a picture, you and him, and now I'm losing myself. What?
So we've got a different delay throw right here. Again, it's a quarter note, but it's just processed a little bit differently. I layered over this low vocal that we did. It just is the initial vocal preset. It tuned down an entire octave or 12 semitones. I took off Decapitator, and then I kept the slide back delay, and then I added doubler and just kind of scooped out a little bit of the lows.
Surprised that I'm drunk again. Just saw a picture, you and him, and now I'm losing.
So that pre-chorus doesn't need much because those like nice big kind of airy synths that are filtered out does a lot for actually letting us build that vibe without putting in a bunch of elements. And then I've just got this nice little loop right here from Sounds of Life, this nice little like blinker transition.
You and him, and now I'm losing myself.
So super simple, one vocal through all that, and then we're coming into the chorus where everything is pretty much new, and that's what makes this one, in my opinion, feel kind of special, is we've got the initial kicks and snares with the electro snare, and then the ah down hit. So this is what we had originally. So we changed up that kick pattern to give us a little bit of variation over the Also too, if you were listening closely, you might notice that this is a different kick sample than the verses. That was the kick that we used in the verse. That's the kick that we're going to use in the chorus because I wanted a little bit more punch and high-end click just to kind of cut through the mix. So that's a good tip if you're doing something like this. Using a very similar sample in the verses and choruses, but having something that's just a little bit different where you're getting that extra sense of dynamic. So we're changing up the pattern and we have a new kick. But after that, we're going to add a ton of stuff on top. We've got a tambourine hit right here. We've got an extra clap that's going to happen with all the snares. We've got this little hi-hat loop from our hi-hat pack. And I like that hi-hat pack a lot because you can add some elements that were actually played by a real drummer. Like all of these loops were played in a studio. And so it definitely helps add just a little bit of that kind of like live variation with the dynamic of them playing and things being just a hair off. So I like to use that as much as possible, especially in pop tracks where everything else can get so kind of synthetic and digital. So we definitely use that. And then we've got these little electronic hi-hats. And that's really just a really standard kind of like 808 style trappy hi-hat with multipass on, and this is giving it some variation. So without multipass, it's pretty standard. I don't like hi-hats that have no variation in pitch or movement or anything whatsoever. So a lot of the time if I find something like that, I'll throw on multipass just to give me a little bit of variation. So it's at least a little interesting to listen to. Then we have this extra little loop. This is also from our Sounds of Life pack. And that actually layers over that electronic hi-hat very well because that hi-hat is kind of clicky and this alien loop is not as clicky and it's got this weird kind of like phasery sound, but they layer over each other really, really, really well. So as you can see with this style where we're going to keep everything pretty minimal, building up your percussive tracks and just having stuff that's going to kind of accent each other and just create one big nice groove is going to be essential to creating that big wall of sound without having a million elements going at once. So I highly recommend, if you're not already doing it in your next tracks, to try to like actually build up your percussion and use more kind of auxiliary elements, use more kind of loops on the background. You can chop stuff up, you can change it however you want to, but just adding some of these things in definitely will help it take it to the next level. Because like, let me show you what the song sounds like with just the one hi-hat loop and nothing else with all the synths. It is crucial for the song to have those extra elements. So now that we're going to talk about the synths, we've just got the same kind of bouncy sounds from before. The center one is just up an octave now to give it a little bit of dynamic. Then we've got the same synths that we had in the pre-chorus, however these are not filtered now, so we've got the staccato-y one that you'll hear a little better. So that nice little staccato-y synth is actually also from Omnisphere. I used Omnisphere a bunch in this because I really like the kind of retro style synths that they have. I just feel like it works really well for this vibe. Serum and Anna would also work perfectly fine. I was just kind of already in Omnisphere and everything is just so kind of ready to go immediately. This was a really quick track that I put together. So we've got those little stack synths right there. Then we've got this big brass. This is like really where the body of everything comes from. And you can get an analog brass sound like that from almost any synth ever, but those are really kind of amazing for pop music because they'll work in pretty much any genre, and you can filter them out to have them a lot less aggressive, or you can kind of boost them up and have them even more aggressive than we currently have them. To me, it's a nice little bridge between having something like a pad and having something like a stab, where you want something that's going to be a little bit more audible and aggressive than a pad. However, you want something that's going to be a little bit less kind of in your face than a pluck. So I'll use brass to kind of fill that little void. Then we've got another brass that's higher. Then I just layered up that initial kind of sound that we have for the actual melody. So what I did for this was I just actually found a pad in Omnisphere, and then it's like the singing signs pad, and then what I did was I added kickstart to give us some movement. I'm a big fan of adding stuff like that to pads, especially in choruses, just to give us a little bit more movement and a little bit more kind of urgency rather than just having everything be sustained. Here's what we have for a layer for the bouncing synth. So as you can hear, we've got a lot more kind of mids and high mids, and that's just to really kind of help that element as a whole kind of poke through the mix. Other than that, it gets kind of lost, especially when vocals come in, because these signs right here, even being bit crushed, still don't have a ton of kind of like presence in that area. So as you can see, they blend really well, and that just really happens with like EQing and filtering and stuff like that. So if you're ever trying to blend synths, get synths that are kind of as close as possible just in terms of like their kind of synth family. So both of these are kind of sine-driven plucks, and then you can kind of mesh them together with stuff like EQ and saturation and stuff like that to kind of help it create one sound instead of being a bunch of different things happening. Then we've got this. This actually does act as a totally different sonic sound. And that just gives us this cool, like, it almost reminds me of like a computer glitching or something like that. Also from Omnisphere, I think we basically only use Omnisphere in this song, except for maybe the synths. And that is the puzzle plug. So this one's really cool. It added like this cool little like weird kind of like lo-fi sound. Then we've got our bass. So the bass is actually an 808, and this is just an 808 straight out of Anna. Super simple. It's just the odds 808. You've probably got it in the free pack that we've ever given away. It's in the On the Charts pack, I do believe. And then there's really no post-processing. And then here's like this cool little bassy click kind of vibe. I got this actually from Conan Gray's last song, Wish You Were Sober. It's kind of got these like cool little glitch basses where it doesn't kind of act as a bass run like you would hear in like a hip hop or R&B song. It's more so just this little. And you can do that just by having a really aggressive 808, and then you just kind of saturate the crap out of it and filter out some of the low end, so you're just really getting like a, here it is with nothing on it. So you really want to make sure that you're actually making that sound like this like weird kind of cool bit crush pluck rather than just an 808 with a ton of kind of low end body. Now let's dive into the vocal production, and that is the last thing we have to go over. So what I did for the lead and the chorus is I actually dropped the kind of roomy sound. So I dropped decapitator and I took off the slapback delay because we are going to have a bunch of extra layers. So we've got.
What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you've told me. Give me a little time.
And so that's tracked 3 times, once in the middle, once on the left, and once on the right. Same exact melody. Then I've got these harmonies tracked twice, once on the left and once on the right.
What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you've told me. Give me a little time.
And then I've got this last little harmony, again, tracked left and right, and this one is not panned the same. So we've got panned 100, 100 on the main melody, panned like 60 and 60 on the first harmony, and then panned like 80 and 80 on the second harmony.
What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you told me. Give me a little time. I'm numb and left with no feeling, and now I'm broken in pieces. I got nothing to believe in. Please come and ease my mind.
So with this style, it is really essential to layer vocals and to have those kind of melodies and harmonies that are going to go throughout. So if we were to drop out those harmonies, this kind of gets really one-dimensional. And even though the top line is catchy in my opinion, it doesn't really just nail the entire song.
I'm losing myself. What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you told me. Give me a little time. I'm not been left
Now, the last thing we're gonna talk about is something that a lot of people have asked on this channel for years, and that is how to process these like nice little hums. You hear them in a Lauv song a lot, so I'll kind of let you hear what we have without any plugins. So it's just a hum that I tracked myself, auto-tune, virtual mix rack, basically the same thing as the lead vocal in the verse with that slapback delay and everything. And then I just added its own little delay and reverb to kind of act as its own little thing, like I would process a synth almost. And I drove Decapitator a lot harder on this. I think this is like at 5, but we've got the wet almost 100% now. And then I tracked that hum a second time, and then same chain, except I added doubler. So now we've got this on the sides. And then I duplicated the one down the middle and took it up an octave in auto-tune. And then not only did I take it up an octave though, I also messed with the formant, and I took that up to 180, which gives us this kind of cool little texture. And you can't really hear that high one in the terms of like the entire mix. However, in my opinion, that really helps these hums kind of actually sit in and be something that you can hear opposed to just kind of falling in the background as kind of a synth. So I'll show you what it sounds like with the hums, and then I'll show you without the high, and then I'll show you again with everything. So here's what it sounds like without that high one. And that is literally the entire song. So just to recap, we've got kick and snare with a nice little extra snare layered over top with a gallopy bass line and a couple little synths that kind of come in and out for the chorus or for the verse, and that's it. For the pre-chorus, we've got 3 new synths that we had not used before, filtering up. No melody is going through those. It's literally just suspended chords. And then for the chorus, we kind of meet in the middle where we take the synth from the intro, we take the suspended chords from the actual pre-chorus, and then we change the bass and do some kind of 808 that's like a little bit more syncopated and has a bit more like bounce and rhythm to it. And then we just layered up a bunch of percussion, and that's pretty much it. That's the whole thing. So right now, I'll let you just take a full listen to the entire track as it is.
I just saw your sweater in the corner of my closet. I remember when you bought it last July. I flipped through the notes you used to write me on the daily. All the photos that you gave me still hang high. It's getting late, almost 3 a.m. What a surprise that I'm drunk again. Just saw a picture, you and him, and now I'm losing myself. What if I told you I'm lonely? Would you come over and hold me? Retell the stories you told me. Give me a little time. I'm not left with no feeling, and now I'm broken in pieces. I got nothing to believe in. Please come and ease my mind.
As you can see, these projects are pretty simple. There's not a ton happening at one time. It really is all about having a good song at heart and then finding some production to really highlight that, and just having a couple elements going at any one time, and then having those little kind of auxiliary elements kind of pop in and out just to give your listeners a nice little treat. So if you do make music in this style, remember less is more. If you guys have any questions, please let us know in the comments below. If you like this video, make sure you like, comment, and subscribe. It definitely helps us out. Head over to our website and shop the sale this weekend because it will be ending. We appreciate any and all support we can get. Other than that, we will be back next week with another video, and we hope to see y'all soon. Much love, everybody. Stay safe. Peace out.
What if I told you I'm